So just on that note, you were saying about holding a safe space. What are the kind of risks that people need to take into consideration before doing an ayahuasca ceremony?
Okay, well, we mentioned earlier on about the type of brew and how it's made, so that's an important thing to take into consideration if there are any admixtures, especially this ingredient, the Toei, the Datura. That is something I would highly not recommend. Beyond that, I think we also mentioned about this whole inner space thing. As I said, there's a whole wealth of traditions out there, ways people, hold ceremonies and lineages that are very, very strong and have, worked around the planet. But for me, I think one of the greatest risks with working with sacred grandmother medicine is this kind of like modern day tradition that has brought ayahuasca ceremonies into a more celebratory kind of space, and people working with lights on. I know it's this kind of like light and dark kind of story, but if I can explain something about the kind of the chemistry and the science behind working with the lights on versus working in the dark, then maybe people would have a better understanding of what I'm trying to explain here. When you work in inner space, ayahuasca really helps you to reprogram your brain. It kind of opens stuff up and allows you to like break loops that you may have, patterns that you may have, let go of addictions, and just kind of like reprogram yourself in more alignment to your intuitive self and your destiny and like your connection, and why you're here on this planet right now, why you've incarnated at this time. We live in a very 3D reality, very material world. Everything we see through our eyes. Most of us who've grown up, in this modern culture, things are very, very materialistic. It's all about, how clever you are, how much money you have, what kind of car, what clothes, all this kind of stuff. So I'm sure most of us have had that experience of working with intuition, where you're in a certain situation and a question or something arises and you intuitively feel that you know what you should do, and then after that moment your mind kicks in and you get the voices or just that conversation of like where the kind of like rationality or the fear or the ego comes in, and instead of going with your gut intuitive feeling, you kind of go on this kind of kind of more cerebral kind of mind story, and then later on the situation unfolds and you're like, oh, why didn't I just go with what I felt, because you kind of like talked yourself out of something, or you kind of like changed your decision because of your kind of mental process. So this is one of the great things about working with the medicine, especially working in inner space, is that you have an opportunity to realign yourself to connect more from like an intuitive perspective rather than a mental perspective. And the mind is an incredible tool, and it is a tool though, and when it's in charge, I'm sure we all know how the mind can get completely out of control. So that's one of the main reasons for working in the dark, is when you're working in this ayahuasca space, this medicine space, you're giving yourself an opportunity to realign yourself. And like anything, it's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym and you keep doing exercise on your arm, that muscle is going to get stronger. The same with medicine space. And medicine space, is an opportunity to accelerate the process almost in a way, or move the vibration up at a quicker rate. So if you exercise your mind, so you're looking around, you're in the visual realm, then you're making your mind stronger. You're making exactly. And on a deeper level, exactly. If you start looking at your subconscious processes and your neural pathways in your brain, you're reinforcing those as well. I mean, on a very basic level, it's just making your mind stronger. If you want to start really
so if you want to get more into your intuition and your feelings,
everything works from there. That's really that's really if you look at all spiritual practice, it's about letting go of the mind and reaching out with your feelings. And when you do that, the mind works incredibly. It all just like flows and slots into place, and you start to really connect with the resonance of your destiny. Imagine if you're incarnated on this planet with a certain mission, Google Maps, I'm jumping in at this point and I need to get to that point, and of course with our free will and our minds we go off on this tangent and that tangent kind of thing. But there is this resonance, even though in the incarnation process maybe that kind of like gets kind of like, the hard drive gets scrambled a little bit. It's like, what am I here? What am I doing? But there is a resonance, and you feel it and you see it as well with synchronicity. And those kind of experiences, it's like they're little clues, and then obviously there's the other clues which are obviously not so nice when you go too far
of
off,
course,
and
you
something will come and give you a bit of a slap or a kick, and often there's subtle messages to start with, and if you keep like going in the wrong direction, going in your mind, there's suddenly bam, something will come along and be like, you need a little course correction in this direction, and whether that's like your guides or kind of a higher part of your consciousness just kind of like helping you on your way. So
so we're wanting to connect more with the flow and avoid some of these more forceful corrections in our path.
And unfortunately we do have, we're all defined by our our psychological makeup and the traumas and issues and experiences we have in our younger lives that really form who we are as people, and they are the core issues that working with this medicine can really help you to see those, bring them into your consciousness and start to release them. If you are a mental process, you're such a sensitive, energetic body. I mean, I know most of us are not necessarily connected to that all the time because we're so bombarded by all this kind of like input. But there's this very, very sensitive side to our energetic body, and when we're in such a sensitive space with the medicine and all these impulses are hitting us, lights, then on a subtle level we're actually kind of like adding layers of like psychic armor to our auric field, as well as the same thing of like almost like concreting over our issues, like we're not dealing with those because we need to deal with all this stuff. So very, very important to work in the dark. That's probably the biggest thing that I'd like to share in this video about this kind of like light and dark thing, because there's so many people who are like, I love working in this tradition because it's so nice and it's great energy, and in the morning they hug everyone and they have an amazing experience and it's great, and on the surface it is amazing. But if you can have the discipline and feel intuitively to connect with this this deeper kind of work, it's maybe not so immediate, but you're setting such solid foundations for your evolution as a human being. And from a very scientific level, something happens with our brain chemistry when we have no light falling on the back of our retinas, like for example when we're like going to sleep or we're in meditation in a dark place. What happens is that when there's no light falling on the back of your retina, your brain starts to produce chemicals that allow you to go into these deeper states of consciousness, alpha, theta kind of spaces.
This is where we can start to access more of our subconscious.
And just become much more intuitive and connected. For example, melatonin and DMT are produced when we're in that kind of like meditative space. Naturally in the space. And I think that's another problem as well with some of these traditions, is that because people are working in the light, the DMT element of what they're doing needs to be boosted, more boosted, and so you're needing to drink more to get that same kind of kick kind of thing. Whereas when you're working in a darkened space, you actually start to naturally learn how to access your pineal gland and to naturally release these chemicals that bring you into this kind of like more meditative and connected, intuitive space. So,
That's great. And I was just wondering also in relation to some of the risks that people are taking into consideration. There has been some mention of like dark shamans and spirits and things like that that create a little bit of hype and fear.
For sure,
Would you mind sort of commenting a bit on this and like giving some people like some clarity?
I mean, it is very real, like especially over in the Amazon. Witchcraft is still, very, very strong, and you'll get many shamans who will be like, I can, there's things called pasangas where you can get spells put on people and stuff like that. I mean, I think
these are brujas.
Brujas, wizards, kind of, whatever you like to call them. Most importantly is going back to that intuitive thing, especially, for women. You should have that power very strong, so and especially there's that kind of thing of like, well, maybe shamans are using their power for kind of like to get money or to get women, that kind of stuff. So trust your intuition really on that one. A good space holder also should be able to create a safe space so that you're not being attacked by spirits or by other shamans. There's obviously that whole kind of
energetic.
I'm a better shaman than you kind of thing, and there's this kind of sub kind of story going on with competition between shamans. So I think now, because it's become such an important tourism thing and a way for people in the forest to make money, that's really keeping things clear, because it's like, actually this has become a very good source of income for us, and much better than working for some of the other people and deforesting the rainforest. And I think most importantly, beyond trusting your intuition, is that if you're really connected to heart space, and this medicine really connects you to heart space, and she connects you with that kind of beauty and harmony on the planet. For sure, you need to be careful. That's just a common sense thing. If you're traveling, or if you're a person going into a new experience, don't go in completely kind of like, oh, everything's great kind of thing. Be aware and conscious. The same way as you wouldn't leave your wallet on the side of the street with all the money showing out in a city or something like that. There's ways to be
selecting the shaman appropriately.